My wife laughed and said she was going on a date. Don't be jealous. I said only one thing, and she froze. But before we continue, write in the comments what country you're from and how old you are. Enjoy listening. My name is Thomas Bennett. I'm 44 years old. For 15 years, I've been running a diving center called Deep Blue on the coast near Monterey Bay. I built it from scratch after being discharged from the Navy. My wife, Jessica, and I had been married for 22 years. I always believed we had a strong union, trust, partnership, love, until one scene crossed out everything. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I was tinkering with scuba gear in the garage after the morning dive when I heard the distinctive clicking of heels on the kitchen tiles. Strange, Jessica usually wore sneakers at home. I entered the house, wiping my hands with a towel, and froze. She stood by the mirror wearing a tight black dress I'd never seen before. I immediately understood she wasn't going grocery shopping. Where are you going? I asked, trying to speak calmly. On a date, she replied, as if discussing the weather, and with that same predatory cold expression added, try not to be jealous. These words hit harder than if she had simply shouted, I don't love you. I stood there with a towel in my hand, watching my wife laugh in my face without shame, without regret, only mockery. A date, I repeated, already knowing the answer. You understood correctly. Don't wait up for me, she said, checking how the dress fit and grabbing her purse. I didn't make a scene, didn't beg. I only said quietly, interesting how you'll explain this to your sister tomorrow. She froze for a second. What do you mean? Nothing, I shrugged. Have a good evening. But it wasn't nothing. Jessica's sister Catherine lived a few blocks away and often dropped by unannounced. And lately, she'd been asking suspicious questions about Jessica's book club meetings that had suddenly become too frequent for people supposedly. Reading one book a month, when Jessica slammed the door, I sat in the armchair and just stared. At the wall, 22 years of marriage, and now I'm going on a date. I was shaking not from jealousy, but from how easy it was for her. I poured myself bourbon and began to think. In the depths, panic kills. You must stay calm, assess the situation, act with a cool head. That's how I lived underwater. That's how I decided to live here too. The next morning, Jessica acted as if nothing had happened. She walked around the kitchen, made herself coffee, asked if I'd seen the weather forecast, even kissed my cheek before I left for work. If I hadn't seen her leave the night before in that black dress, I would have doubted whether it all really happened. Systematic person, 5 years in the military and 15 years in business, taught me to record everything. Facts, numbers, dates, and I knew if I wanted to know the truth, I needed not jealousy, but evidence at the diving center. I first went to the office where our joint financial documents were kept. Jessica used to handle everything. I'm better with numbers, she'd say. Turns out, she was better at hiding them. 3 large cash withdrawals in the last month, $5,000 each. Restaurant charges where we'd never been, one of them in Carmel at an expensive hotel. Then I saw a line that took my breath away, an intimate lingerie boutique. I hadn't bought her lingerie. She hadn't shown me anything new. This wasn't just an affair, it was preparation for a new life without me. I called the bank and requested extended statements for 6 months. Then I got in the car and drove to that hotel. At the reception worked a young girl named Jenny. I showed her Jessica's photos. Oh yes, of course. Jessica Bennett, she's been here several times with a man, Rick, I think. Yes, Rick Patterson. Such a nice couple. Rick, the name hit like a punch to the gut. I knew him. 3 years ago, he was my student at the diving center, mid-40s, realtor, recently divorced. I kicked him out after catching him photographing girls in wetsuits with his phone. Back then, he was polite, but creepy. Now it turns out, he was arranging photo shoots in hotel rooms with my wife. On the way back, I called an old Army friend, Jake Anderson. He now worked at a private detective agency in San Francisco. We once pulled each other out of the fire in Afghanistan. He owed me his life. Tommy, tell me what you've got. I exhaled and told him everything about Jessica, about the hotel, about Rick. He listened and said, don't make a move yet. Don't confront her. Don't make scenes. They're like rats in a trap now. They might destroy everything. Evidence, proof, even frame you. Your job is to gather a dossier, photos, videos, documents. This isn't about infidelity anymore. This is war, and you don't have weapons yet." I hung up. That same night, I installed a small camera in the living room, not for spying, but for protection. If Jessica was going to destroy our marriage, she wouldn't destroy my reputation. Late that evening, she came home. "Book club ran late," she said without looking me in the eyes. We discussed the theme of betrayal. I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded and wished her good night. But to myself, I already knew the morning would be mine. In the morning, I was extremely focused. Outside, it was ordinary April weather. Inside my soul was anxiety clenched in a fist. While Jessica was showering, I went through the documents in her purse. What I saw there turned everything upside down. Copies of bank account statements, plane tickets, an address in Turkey, hotel reservation, and a passport with a different name but her photos. She was planning to run away. Not just run away, disappear. At lunch, Jake Anderson called. "Tommy, are you sitting down? She took out a second mortgage on your center. $500,000. Forged signature. The papers were processed through Rick. He's connected to Pacific Alpha Real Estate. They've got schemes with brokers there. The money's already in an offshore account." My breath caught. What? How is this possible? She had a fake power of attorney and apparently bribed the notary. Where's the money now? In a bank in Cyprus. It's being transferred in parts. They're preparing to leave. You need to act fast. That same evening, Jessica came home with new purchases, suitcases, jewelry, expensive clothes, all with money we didn't have. Having a celebration, I asked. "A woman has the right to pamper herself," she replied coldly, raising her glass. "You're always buried in your underwater stuff, and I'm a person too." I gritted my teeth, wanted to say everything, but Jake's words echoed in my head. Don't make noise. First the dossier, then the strike. That night, I called lawyer Robert Patterson. We served together. Now he was one of the toughest attorneys in the state. He listened without interrupting, then said, "This is criminal, forgery, fraud, theft. Attempted flight. We'll freeze accounts, freeze assets, and bring in the FBI. This case goes beyond state lines." The next day, with emergency court orders, we froze all assets. And exactly on this day, I got a call from Margaret Thompson, Jessica's mother. "Thomas, she's planning something. She's asking me for $50,000 for some business with a friend in Atlanta. I feel something's wrong." I didn't beat around the bush. I told her everything. About the affair, about Rick, about the mortgage, about the offshore accounts. There was silence. On the other end, then, I didn't raise her to be like this. "What can I do?" I exhaled. "Help me stop her." "All right," she said. "I'm with you to the end." On Monday, Jake called me with alarming news. "Tommy, you have no time at all. Jessica is meeting with Lieutenant Colonel Robert Morrison from the local police department. He's been under suspicion for a long time. Participates in covering businesses, buries cases for money. Looks like she's paying him for protection." Now, everything fell into place. Why she was so confident, why she laughed in my face. She had immunity. "We need to go higher," Jake said. "This goes beyond the region. They transferred money through offshore accounts. This is federal level now." The next day, I met with FBI agent Sandra Mitchell at a cafe outside town. I showed her documents, statements, photos, told her about Rick, the fake passport, and forged signature. She listened carefully, interrupting only once. "You understand this isn't a story about infidelity anymore. This is an organized scheme. Your materials fill gaps in an investigation we've been conducting in the Western region for 2 years. The FBI asked me not to let on, to let Jessica feel safe. We'll track the meeting with Rick. Let them think everything's going according to plan. Can you handle it?" "We've already started," Sandra replied. "But we need her family to know the truth too. Otherwise, they might help her leave." The idea came quickly. A dinner with relatives, a trap. I called Margaret Thompson. "Say you have chest pains. Say you want to discuss something important with your daughter and invite her over in the evening. Let her think you sympathize with her." "All right," my mother-in-law sighed. "I'll do it, but it will hurt." That evening, at the appointed time, I arrived at Margaret's house. Her son Michael with his wife were already there, as well as Sandra. From the FBI, posing as a family friend, everyone was tense. At 7:30 p.m., Jessica walked through the door in a new jacket with that same confident smile. "Mom, what happened?" But when she entered the living room and saw me at the table with a folder of documents, the smile disappeared. "Thomas, what are you doing here?" "Sit down," I said calmly. "We need to talk." "Mom, what's going on?" But instead of answering, her mother placed papers in front of her. "I know everything, Jessica, about the mortgage, about the hotel, about your trips, about the forged signature. I'm ashamed you're my daughter." I pulled. But instead of answering, her mother placed papers in front of her. "I know everything, Jessica, about the mortgage, about the hotel, about your trips, about the forged signature. I'm ashamed you're my daughter." I pulled out an envelope with bank printouts. "Here's where you transferred $500,000 to Cyprus, and here's confirmation of tickets for you and Rick to Turkey." She went pale. "Did you spy on me?" I protected myself. "You didn't just want to leave, you wanted to take everything and disappear." At that moment, Sandra stood up and slowly pulled out her badge. "Jessica Bennett, you're under arrest on suspicion of fraud, document forgery, and attempted illegal capital flight abroad." She stood up, trembling. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding. I just wanted to destroy everything we built in 20 years, I interrupted. Jessica didn't get to answer. Officers in uniform were already standing at the door. Taking her by the arms, they led her out silently, and I remained sitting with an empty glass in my hand and the feeling that everything was over. But this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a new life. The next morning, Sandra called me, "Thomas, everything's moving faster than we thought." We arrested 6 people: Rick, the notary, the broker, and even Lieutenant Colonel Morrison. And Jessica is giving testimony. She realized she was trapped. Rick, it turns out, was planning to get rid of you? I couldn't believe it immediately. "What do you mean, get rid of?" "He was going to arrange an accident during a dive. Your insurance and property would have gone to her. Only Jessica refused at the last moment. That's what saved your life." I vomited. Right into the sink. The fact that she cheated was one thing. The fact that murder was planned as the finale was completely different. I knew I'd never be able to look at the ocean the same way again. 2 days later, the FBI called me. We froze accounts, returned 80% of the stolen funds. Deep blue diving. Center belongs to you again. The mortgage is declared invalid. Also, someone from the tax office came with a smile and flowers. "Thank you for helping." Thanks to you, we uncovered a network that was robbing small businesses throughout the western United States. I stood by my boat, watching the sunrise, and for the first time in many weeks felt not anger and not pain, but silence. Inner silence. The center was working again. People were signing up for dives. New clients appeared, the newspaper wrote. Instructor who survived betrayal helps uncover economic crimes. Margaret Thompson, my mother-in-law, stayed to work with me in the office. Who would have thought, she chuckled, sorting through applications, that son-in-law and I would run a business together. Who would have thought my daughter would betray ... but not you. Her honesty became the foundation of my new life. A month later, I got a call from the FBI. "Thomas, we want to offer you cooperation. We're launching a program to support victims of financial schemes. You're an excellent candidate to head it." Why me? Because you survived. You didn't give up, didn't become bitter, and also because people trust you. They go to those who've been through hell and got out. 3 months after Jessica's arrest, I received a summons. Court. 3 years for fraud, document forgery, conspiracy. Lieutenant Colonel Morrison got 5 years. And although my ex-wife sat in the defendant's dock, I felt no anger, only fatigue and clarity. After the hearing, Sandra approached me. "Thomas, you know we returned 87% of the funds. That's a record. The rest is scattered. But most victims will receive compensation." And I returned not only the business, I returned myself. Deep Blue became not just a diving school. We opened a support program for victims of financial crimes, free training, psychological help, consultations. With each person who came, I spoke personally. I knew what a man who was betrayed, robbed, humiliated feels like, and I knew how to rise. One of the first was a young woman, Amanda, 35 years old. An investor deceived her, taking everything. She trembled when she first put on a mask and went underwater. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Fear is good," I replied. "The main thing is not to panic. Learn to breathe again." We became friends. 6 months later, she became an instructor herself. Lawyers, psychologists, even former investigators worked with U.S. And Margaret Thompson enrolled in a civilian expert school at the police department. At 63, old bones don't interfere with a clear mind, she said. Someone has to help people like you. When journalists asked what happened to Jessica, I answered briefly. She made her choice. I did too. On the wall in the office hung a sin. Depth is not only about water, it's about strength, about emerging from darkness. A year passed. At sunset, on the deck of our new boat Honesty, I watched the sun go beyond the horizon. Next to me stood Margaret Thompson with hot tea. You became stronger. I'm just not afraid anymore. The ocean isn't about forgetting. The ocean is about truth. Underwater, you can't pretend. And no matter how deep you fall, if you have air, will, and hands, you'll surface. Did you like the story? Support with a like and write what you would have done in Thomas's place. Subscribe so you don't miss new life stories.